Welcome to the Sourcing Hero podcast, produced by Una, a group purchasing organization that empowers sourcing heroes, and Art of Procurement, the world's largest procurement podcast network. I'm your host, Kelly Barnard. The goal of the Sourcing Hero podcast is to capture the epic stories of people who are rising up and beating the odds to create exceptional value within procurement, directly from those heroes themselves. Today, my guest here on the Sourcing Hero podcast is Chuck Shehadi. Chuck is the COO at Solugen, a chemical manufacturing company based in Houston, Texas. When it comes to the skills required to be considered a talented procurement professional in his world, that means technical, highly technical, and with the right level of category specialization. So, hi, Chuck. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you, Kelly. Pleasure to be here.
So I shared a little bit about your current role in my intro, but what else do you think it's helpful for people to know about your professional journey?
I would say my professional journey is very unique to the industry I'm currently in, but I would also say that my professional journey in its totality, I've worked in several different industries. All of them have been pretty technical in the way that the companies have formed, whether it was technology, hardware, software, automotive, textiles, either clothing or shoes or hard goods in the textile space, and then now chemical engineering. And I don't have an engineering degree at all. Everything at my undergrad is in mathematics, and my master's is in supply chain. So for me, when you kind of like look at my career, it is a very non-traditional path that has got me to where I am today.
So that's your background, but because you and your team have such a technical focus, how would you sort of generally describe the backgrounds that the rest of your team members have?
I have a lot of in my current role, I have a lot of chemical engineers. In this company, we have a lot of chemical engineers and PhDs as well.
Okay.
In since we are not a traditional chemical manufacturer per se, because we are or more of a biotechnology company that produces chemicals and we sell. So we have PhDs in biology in the company, biotechnology, chemistry, and then we have the business people that I would say that have much more of my skill set within the operations world. But everybody on my manufacturing team are all chemical engineers and backgrounds.
Interesting. Now,
Mm.
how did all of them find their way to procurement?
I would say that in the traditional procurement lens, they started off as scientists or chemists working in a lab, and then they really wanted to be much more involved in the business side
Okay.
of manufacturing. And that's been my historical career, even in automotive, clothing, and in technology. Most of my team started off either as like mechanical, electrical engineers. That's what their education was in. And then they either went to go to business school for their master's, or they transitioned after they didn't want to be a designer anymore. They wanted to understand, like,
Okay.
hey, how do I do manufacturing? And that skill set is critical to not only understand like how things are built, but how you can get the most value to make it a profitable business.
Now, one of the things that I've heard in other conversations where procurement has some level of technical expertise is that you can end up with a little bit of a tug of war with the business. You know, how much expertise resides within procurement? How much expertise does the business have? What kind of expertise does the supplier then bring to the conversation? Where would you say that line is between sort of the category knowledge and the procurement knowledge that your team has in terms of how you work with the business?
Yeah. I think I would say it was very specific to the company that you're in, is how I would describe it firstly. At the end of the day, the product manager and the product driver within the engineering team is the biggest decision maker. I would say that the procurement and sourcing organization influences those decisions, but if push comes to shove, the designer will always win. Um,
Okay.
how you can always influence that decision, though, is by giving them options and having the technical expertise to actually have those deeper level conversations. So you're not talking at a very high level, you're talking at a much more detailed level. If it's a
Yeah.
mechanical enclosure or mechanical design, you really understand how it's produced. And you can understand if with slight design changes, you can reduce the cost tremendously. So from at that point of view, is design going to win? Is the product development process or engineering schematics need to be
Okay.
changed in order to do that? And that's like the real value that a really good technical sourcing person can bring to the equation from the engineering team and the design team.
Now, when it comes to that sort of chemical knowledge, that's already a category in terms of how most people think. But given that this is where your team specializes, how
Mhm.
does that expertise break down within your procurement team?
Within my procuring team now, it's much more generalized, I would say. Both of my sourcing, my current sourcing team is two people. We're a small company, we're 117
Sure.
employees, but my head of sourcing is an ex-salesperson, actually. Chemical engineer that became that did sales, and they at their previous company they had to do sales and sourcing. So they loved the sourcing side. So they came on board
Interesting.
here and to really focus on the sourcing side of it. And then the other buyer I have is just a traditional buyer. They're much more transactional than they
Okay.
would say is sourcing per se. But the way that we divide up the chemicals, or I would say we have a mixture of raw materials that go into our process. And then we also have a distribution side of our business that is a commodity business. So they buy commodities and we resell the commodities to our customers. Sometimes we blend other chemicals into it
Okay.
with our from our core chemistry, and other times it's just complete pass through and negotiating. So when you're dealing with commodity buyers, there's not a lot you can do. The market kind of sets the
Mm,
price. You're just trying to making sure your value add is consistent. Then you can make a good margin versus our core chemistries that we manufacture through our biotechnology process. We have 5 raw materials go into that process. So we're really negotiating hard on some of those commodities and specialty items that go into that. And that's a much more technical role. You're working hand in hand with R&D and qualifying these suppliers because we use an enzymatic process that is unlike anything else that's really used in the market right now to qualify some of those components. So from that point of view, that person needs to be much more technical when they're dealing with the R&D team around like what actually needs to be put into our manufacturing processes versus our main input is is dextrose derived from corn syrup, which is at the end of the day, it's a commodity.
So I can see where, given how specialized you are and how interrelated all of this
Mhm.
is, right? Where you're working with R&D, you're working with suppliers, you really do have to have that technical background. But then how interesting to also have somebody within your team that has sales experience. That must allow your team to be, I would say of two minds, but it's really of three minds, right? So you're thinking about sort of the traditional spend management things, you're thinking about the category expertise, but then you're thinking about partnering with other companies to achieve everything that needs to be done. It must allow your team to be very, creative and commercially minded versus being sort of just limited to the traditional procurement role where you're managing a process.
Yeah, I think it's critical skill that some people don't appreciate as much, I would say. Like having understand and having somebody that's on the sourcing team that understands the sales cycle and the customer journey as well is critical to kind of like being well rounded and delivering
Yeah.
value to the business. Because at the end of the day, like the sourcing organization's main customer is the engineering and the sales team. And
Yeah.
at the end, with the end state being the customer. So if you kind of look at it from that lens, you add a tremendous amount of value to the business when you have somebody on the team that can think just like the sales team is thinking consistently. The sales team looks at this organization differently because they know they
Mm,
have somebody that's done their job before. That it's not just saying like, hey, a lot of people look at sourcing as the opposite of sales. This person like lived it previously at another life and
mm.
understands like the pain they need to go to acquire a customer, as well as we can bring our sourcing person to a customer meeting and they can talk both sides of like what we are able to do for them to add value, as well as understand like some of their pain points to deliver the best value to the customer.
One of the other things that I think plays into this that you and I had talked about previously is how important it is for people to know what determines the cost of what they're negotiating. I wonder if I could get you to speak to that a little bit so we could bring it into this conversation.
Yeah, I think that the best way to kind of approach this is how I've been trained in some of the technology, I would say sources very differently than other industries. You really take a first principles approach to sourcing at some of the companies that I have been to, and you really break it down to the pure raw material costs as well as the value added input, and you develop should cost modeling for everything you buy. In this industry, it's very rare just to see that. So for
Mm,
me, coming from a background where should cost modeling is not developed is something that we're teaching even my sourcing people that haven't done it before. And it's driving the value for us across the entire value chain to understand how well do we know our vendors and
yeah.
suppliers to make sure we're negotiating the best price. Because in a commodity market, it's even more critical. If we can, most of commodities are benchmarked off of something that's traded on the on some commodity exchange somewhere,
Yeah.
whether it's a natural gas exchange, whether it's corn as a benchmark. And there's a formulaic approach that you can actually ask your suppliers and vendors for them to show me, like, all right, tell me where all of the market swings could possibly happen in my price. And I want and I'm willing to take those swings because I can
Mm.
hedge anything that's in a commodity. We do it with gold here because gold is part of our catalyst that is
Okay.
used in our manufacturing process. And then it keeps our price. So we can either hedge it, we can take out options, we can take out futures against it, which is exactly what a lot of these vendors that are selling commodities are doing. They're actually really financial institutions that trade and they use arbitrage to negotiate pricing. So you can ask them for the formula that they use and negotiate that formula. And
Okay.
if you're willing to take the risk and the swings in those commodities, you're only negotiating the value added part of that price. So it gives you a lot more visibility into your prices if pricing increases does happen. And it's kind of like the best way I would describe it is like a fuel surcharge and logistics pricing.
Okay.
As
Yep.
gas prices go up, there's nobody who can control that other than the index.
Yeah.
So there's a matrix that you can negotiate with a lot of your vendors and suppliers that nobody even thinks to ask for. So in my experience, we're really driving everybody to that around a lot of our commodity pricing that we get. I'll take the risk. There's no risk for you. I want the best possible price you can give
Yeah.
me, and then we can go out and model it based off of, and we can get ahead of cost increases that happen within the market of the commodity, and then you negotiate that on a monthly or a quarterly basis.
Now, given your background and how it sounds like the background of your team is made up, I'd be interested in your advice for somebody who's in a generalized procurement role that would either like to become more technically proficient or somebody in engineering that might enjoy the commercial side of the business and want to move closer to procurement. What sort of advice would you offer to somebody on sort of either end of that journey if they wanted to swap over and head the other way?
I think it comes back to always be curious and always be humble enough to to say you don't know. I mean,
Mm,
the best way I would describe this to anyone, I walked into a job at Apple with absolutely no engineering experience at all or zero manufacturing experience. And what allowed me to be successful is that I'm not afraid to go up to a mechanical or electrical engineer, and I'm not afraid to go up to my chemists and PhDs here and be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And you can say in the room, be like, I don't want to interrupt the meeting right now, but like, and it's kind of funny. The best way I try to describe it in my current company is like, we're having nerd talk right now because I'm the only person that's not a chemical engineer or PhD in the company. Like
yeah.
every single person I'm working with, both my founders have PhDs. One's a biologist, one is a metallurgist. All the R&D team is a biology or a chemistry PhD. Everybody in my manufacturing organization are chemical engineers. So when they start breaking into like chemistry formulas, I haven't taken chemistry in 20 years. I took it
Yeah.
in college for a year. So I'm like, all right, we're gonna have a nerd talk right now. I'm like, all right, please break this down for the non-nerd in the room so that you can explain this to me like I'm a 5-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Like I want to, if you can, because then you really can test your engineers and how knowledgeable they are. If they can teach it, they really, really know it.
Okay.
So for me, I've never been a shy asking when I was working in tech, the mechanical and electrical engineers and be like, listen, I took a semester of electrical engineering, so I can speak very highly about what it is. Can you please just draw this on the board, the circuit, so I can understand it better and give me 30 minutes? And every great engineer I've ever met in my life loves to talk about their work. So
Okay.
you need to have the humility to ask them say like, I need to learn this enough that I can be dangerous and have an intellectual conversation about it. I don't need PhD level understanding or even master level understanding. I need to be able to understand this enough that I'm dangerous, that I can talk into a room and I know how a transistor works if it's electrical engineering. I want to understand like how an enzymatic reaction works in chemistry, so that when I come to a room, I'm not completely like blindsided. I'm just sitting there bored. For me, like it's always like the ability to be curious and
Yeah.
understand how well the process can work, because I also can bring completely different perspective of like when something is not working and break it down to the fundamentals of first principles into like the raw inputs of something,
Okay.
understanding how to problem solve. I think totally different than an engineer does.
Yeah.
So for them, it's like, the best way to try to describe it is like super curiosity. Children can solve, and like when the curiosity comes from when you're a kid and you're always trying something new, is the best way to describe it. Like a lot of adults lose that as they get older. So as you're in a meeting with people that are very technical and be like, have you guys ever thought about it this way? And they're like, no, I had no idea to think about it that way. And like you might actually add value to the conversation that you thought you could never add. And that also, like, then you looked at as a valuable resource because you don't think like they do. You think differently than everybody else does in the room as well.
Yeah. Well, and you would like to think that they would take it as a compliment. I mean, I know how I would feel if somebody actually came up to me in a meeting and said, gee, I'm really curious about this procurement thing. Can you tell me a little bit more about it? Now, you have to mean it, right? If you're going to
Yeah.
ask somebody to share information, you can't then stare out the window or let your eyes roll back in your head. Like, you have to stay engaged. But I would think most
Mhm.
people would take that as a compliment, that you're looking to learn something about what I do on a daily basis.
Exactly. 100% agree with you. Like at the
Yeah.
end of the day, it all comes back to like, how do you create human connection with others? And the best way you can do it is by asking lots of questions.
Yeah. Now, Chuck, we have a tradition here at the Sourcing Hero podcast that I want to bring you in on. So I'm going to give you two questions. You can pick either one. And always think we've heard every single answer until we hear the next one. So there's no wrong
Mhm.
response to either of these. But your choices are: what does the idea of a sourcing hero mean to you? Or what do you think heroism looks like in a business context?
I mean, a sourcing hero to me is just someone that is willing to be helpful and go above and beyond what is necessary within the job description to help the team win. At the end of the day, it doesn't have to be within sourcing. Like,
Mm,
be a good teammate, go above and beyond what is necessary, and build your human capital within any company. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Like, volunteer and help always. And that you'll thrive in your career no matter what you do, whether it's sourcing, whether it's engineering, whether it's product. People just want to be around other people that are willing to help. So always be willing to offer help, even if something is super uncomfortable for you. For me, I love to do things that are uncomfortable. Like that's why I've worked in 5 different industries in the 15 years that I've been in like corporate America. And don't be afraid to say you don't know. Like that's the most critical thing, is being humble and understanding. Be like, I don't know what the answer to this is, but I'm willing to go find out. And these are the people I need to go learn from. And once you're able to do that, in my opinion, like the sky's the limit to what you do in your career.
I think that's a fantastic piece of advice. Sometimes I've even found in the conversations I have, as soon as someone in the room is willing to break the ice by saying, I don't know, or I'm not sure what the right thing to do is here, everyone else, sort of everybody's shield comes down, and it actually accelerates the process of getting to an answer. Chuck, this is a really interesting conversation. I love hearing about the more technical side of things. I think very few procurement professionals get to do the kind of work that you're doing. If people are meeting you or learning about the work that you do for the first time through this conversation, what would be the best way for them to reach out and connect?
I would say LinkedIn's the easiest way to kind of get a hold. Like I am very open to, if people reach out to me, even for like a 5 or 10 minute conversation, I typically will engage with them just because I want to be of service to like help people at the end of the day. Like I'm pretty busy, but like there's been probably like 5 or 6 people that I've like semi mentored over the years that have reached out and just been consistent, you know, around like, even if they just want 10 seconds, they want 10 minutes to understand like, how did I get to where I am in my career? I am more than willing to like help the community like thrive, because I mean I'm a big believer in like, you invest in people around you, like it comes back to you and you pay it forward. all the time. Like, I've been very, very fortunate in my life to be surrounded by fantastic people that allows me not only to build like my professional network, but like my human being network is the best way I would describe it.
Well, and you've paid it forward at scale today because we know a lot of
Mhm.
people will listen to this conversation. Hopefully, a few of them will reach out to you and connect. Chuck, thank you so much for your time and for sharing all of your expertise.
Good. Thank you, Kelly. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Sourcing Hero podcast. Join us again next time for more true stories of sourcing and business heroism performed by your colleagues and peers. Look for the Sourcing Hero wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to subscribe. Finally, don't forget, sourcing heroism is taking place all around us every day. Keep your eyes open and you're bound to see it. Until next time, I'm your host, Kelly Barner. Stay well and always remember that you can be a hero too.